Welcome to today's Explainer. So today we're diving into something absolutely fascinating and honestly pretty critical. We're breaking down exactly how students master civic norms. How do you actually transition from, deeply ingrained local habits to absolutely thriving as a global citizen in super high compliance international environments? Well, if you're a student gearing up to study abroad or maybe a parent trying to prep your kid for the global stage, you're going to want to stick around because this is literally your blueprint.
Let's kick things off with a simple, everyday scenario that totally captures what we're talking about here. Picture a crowded park, okay? You've got a stylish teenager who finishes a drink and just drops the empty can right there on the grass, completely ignoring a bin that's like 2 feet away. But then, a moment later, this polite 8-year-old girl spots the can, literally steps out of her play area, picks it up, and drops it firmly into the recycling. When the teen sees this, you can just feel this wave of silent realization wash over him. It really proves something profound, doesn't it? Our behavior in public spaces isn't just about following the rules. It's a direct reflection of our internal awareness and how much we actually respect our community.
All right, let's just jump right into this curriculum blueprint. Today's agenda is essentially your step-by-step masterclass to global citizenship. We're covering 1. The culture shock friction. 2. Mastering physical space boundaries. 3. Defeating the Jew-God mindset. 4. Investing in public trust. 5. Navigating flat corporate hierarchies. And finally, number 6, the Global Readiness Passport.
Okay, jumping into Section 1, the culture shock friction. The subtitle here is Transitioning from Collectivist to Individualist Societies. We're starting with that massive, hit-you-like-a-ton-of-bricks culture shock that students face when leaving high-density, collectivist societies like India and stepping into highly structured, individualistic nations. It is a massive clash of social contracts. Now, what's wild to think about is how a nation's collective civic behavior literally impacts the power of your passport and your chances of visa success. When a country has visible struggles with, say, traffic chaos or poor public sanitation, it actively damages its soft power. And here's the crazy part about population scale. Even if 99.9% of travelers are perfectly rule-abiding, that tiny 0.1% who break the rules, well, from a massive population, that translates to hundreds of thousands of people. That creates a mathematical headache for host countries, which is exactly why foreign embassies view travelers from developing economies as quote-unquote flight risks. Visa agreements rely heavily on reciprocity and global reputation. Think about Japanese fans famously cleaning up World Cup stadiums, right? That simple civic habit generates immense soft power. Moving right along to Section 2, Mastering Physical Space Boundaries. This is Track 1, focusing on ages 7 to 12. Let's look at how we navigate crowds and physical boundaries, which is honestly a foundational skill you've got to master early on. So there is this immediate dramatic tension between local survival habits and super strict international boundaries. In really dense populations, you get this survival of the fastest mindset, right? Crowding and cutting lines are just standard survival tactics to navigate all those people. But take that behavior abroad to high compliance zones, and it's a completely different story. Out there, physical distance is fiercely guarded. Standing closer than an arm's length in a line or tailgating someone, that isn't just considered rude, it's viewed as aggressive harassment and can easily result in security stepping in.
To really show you what happens when these norms collide, let's look at this breakdown of some pretty classic airport escalator chaos. Imagine an Indian child landing at Heathrow Airport. The kid rushes ahead, accidentally pushes past an elderly traveler, and then just stands directly on the walking side of the escalator. Seems totally harmless to the kid, right? But the global rule there is absolute. You stand on one side, and you walk on the other. That simple lack of spatial awareness instantly labels the entire family as undisciplined travelers. It causes friction before they've even grabbed their bags.
So, how do we actually fix this for younger students? Well, we gamify it. To build this habit, kids are given a specific mission called the invisible arm. It's super simple. The next time they're at a checkout lane, they have to stand behind the person in front of them and make sure their family maintains exactly 1 full arm's length of distance. To verify they did it, they snap a quick photo, and boom, they unlock the Public Space Pioneer badge. It's a brilliant way to train them to unconsciously respect physical boundaries.
But that really begs the question, how do you survive when rules are absolute and there is literally no room for negotiation?
And that brings us to Section 3, Defeating the Jew-God Mindset. We're looking at legal, traffic, and pedestrian compliance. Let's see what happens when the celebrated, flexible Jew-God mindset slams into strict, automated Western systems. The crucial thing to understand here is that in the West, there is usually no human being to argue with. The Jugad mindset treats rules as, flexible obstacles. Jumping a signal or arguing with a cop might be rewarded back home as a clever workaround. But the Western reality? It relies heavily on non-negotiable automated surveillance. Cameras and sensors don't care about your excuses. And if you try to bribe an officer, that's not a clever hack. That leads to immediate arrest.
Fear of real-world consequences is a highly effective teacher. Take this crazy case study of a 19-year-old student in Toronto. They were running late, so they sprinted across a busy street to save time. Well, a driver swerves to avoid hitting the student and smashes into a guardrail. In the student's mind, they just took a quick shortcut. But legally, the police hit the student with a heavy jaywalking ticket. And it gets worse. The driver's insurance company personally sued the student for the property damages. The end result was massive financial debt and a university disciplinary record, all for a shortcut.
To make sure that never happens, students go through a specific exercise called the 180-degree stop check. Basically, they watch dashcam footage from standard Western police traffic stops to learn the exact, non-negotiable protocol. You stay inside the vehicle, you turn off the engine, you keep your hands completely visible on the steering wheel, and you speak with absolute calm respect to avoid any escalation. It trains teenagers to totally abandon the instinct to aggressively counter-argue. When you're in a high-compliance society, consistency and calm are everything.
All right, Section 4, Investing in Public Trust. Subtitle here is Civic Economics and Taxation. Because understanding the laws is just step one, now we have to unpack the financial engine of first world societies.
So why exactly is the infrastructure out there so much better? It all boils down to civic economics. In India, less than 5% of the population pays income tax. Tax evasion is kind of tolerated, and public property is often viewed as these abstract government assets that have nothing to do with personal wealth. But look at Western mass compliance. Over 50% of citizens pay income tax. Because of that, they treat public property with intense care because they know they are literally paying for it. You just can't demand European-style infrastructure while holding on to a culture of tax evasion, right? First-world living is basically a paid subscription.
This contrast is perfectly illustrated by what we call the 4% trap. Let's look at two major tech hubs, Bangalore, India, and Austin, Texas. Both have massive corporate wealth, but the municipal results? Totally different. Bangalore has a starved municipal citizen tax base, which, unfortunately, leads to crumbling roads, broken pavements, and severe lake pollution. Austin, on the other hand, supports its high corporate wealth with broad individual mass tax compliance. The result? Pristine public parks, flawless drainage, and automated waste treatment. It isn't magic, guys, it's literally just math.
So we've mapped out the external societal rules, but what about the workplace? How do you survive a toxic flat hierarchy?
That leads us right into Section 5, Navigating Flat Corporate Hierarchies, Anti-Toxic Corporate Culture and Meritocracy. This is where we dismantle the cultural habits that breed workplace toxicity so students are ready for real global leadership.
Surviving abroad means you have to unlearn some deeply ingrained habits. In a traditional hierarchy, survival often depends on boss-pleasing. Sycophancy, gatekeeping information, and dodging any direct disagreement because you're scared of the boss. But in a flat meritocracy, value is determined purely by data. Open disagreement is actually encouraged, as long as you can back it up with proof. And gossip, that's a fast track to swift termination.
This brings up a classic trap for international students. Look at this situation. You've got a brilliant 23-year-old engineer in Silicon Valley who realizes their manager's architecture idea is fundamentally flawed, but out of cultural respect for authority, the engineer stays silent. The consequence? The project completely fails, and the engineer actually gets penalized for lacking ownership and withholding insights. The core lesson here is that in a flat organization, staying silent out of fear isn't respectful, it's an engineering failure. True respect is shown through honest data.
So to fix this, students practice something called the Respectful Dissent Simulator. They role-play a scenario where a corporate director proposes a terrible business idea. The student has to use the SBI feedback model, that's situation, behavior, impact, to openly disagree and present alternative solutions using objective data. Crucially, they have to completely eliminate sycophantic titles like sir, madam, or boss while doing it. It's all about mastering psychological safety and learning to challenge authority cleanly and respectfully as an equal.
Okay, moving to our final section, number 6. The Global Readiness Passport, Actionable Integration and Community Ownership. Let's bring this all together. Because ultimately, these actionable integrations can totally transform communities. When you see grassroots civic action, like students physically cleaning up and reclaiming public spaces, it's incredibly powerful. It applies the broken windows theory, meaning that visible signs of order actually encourage more order. When students truly master these civic norms, they don't just survive when they go abroad. They learn how to shift their own environments from neglected government spaces to proudly defended community property. Which brings us to the ultimate question. If perfect global citizenship is really just a product of engineered habits, actionable missions, and taking community ownership, what's stopping you from upgrading your own civic IQ right now? The blueprint is literally right here. So, will you just wait for the system to change, or will you build your global readiness passport today?